After some time, Adiyogi is bored with their questions because whatever they ask, it's just a product of their intellect. They're not able to ask a question beyond that. So they ask, what is the nature of this, your cosmos? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How big is it? He's just bored. So he says, your cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed. The entire cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed. Then they were flabbergasted by this. Then they said, what is it made of? If you can pack such a huge cosmos, which we can't even imagine where it begins and where it ends into your mustard seed, what is it made of? He was completely bored, even to utter a word, he simply said like this. 5 elements. Just these 5 elements, the entire universe is a play of these 5 elements. If you master the 5 elements, you have a key to every aspect of creation. If you don't master the 5 elements, if you approach it from outside, as you approach it, it will take on a trillion new forms. As you try to study it, it can take on a trillion new forms as you're looking at it, because that is what it is capable of. So, we are trying to approach everything through physical means. If you go through physical means, you will hit that glass wall somewhere. I think, in my perception, I'm not a scientist, I don't know all of it, but in my perception, I think the physicists are near the glass wall. They might not have hit it, they're near.
That's the unknown question, right? We have no guarantee how far we'll get in science. And we may run by glass wall, I assume you mean we run to a place where we say we can't go further.
Where the present faculties will not be good enough. Present faculties of 5 senses and a brain will not be good enough.
That we hit a long time ago. So for example, things like quantum physics, you can't understand it. But you can write it down in equations that make predictions accurate out to 14 decimal places. So we think it's pretty good, and we can build new things out of it, that we can see things much smaller and much farther away than we ever could before. We understand the wondrousness and the subtleness of everything around us much better than we did before. But the actual physics, a human can't understand. We just make tools to get where we need to go with it. So we've already hit that point. And certainly it's the case with the human brain, which is made up of almost 100 billion specialized cells with thousands of trillions of connections between them, and every second…
I like the way you're saying it with the passion. Like some people are talking about food or something else.
I'm a brainy instead of a foodie.
You feed on the brain.
Yeah. But the reason it's easy to be passionate about it is because it's a system of such unimaginable complexity that it bankrupts the language. We have no way that a human could perceive a system of that complexity, and yet each of us has it. There's this 3-pound organ that we're carrying around. But we've already hit that point a long time ago in science where we realize we can make new strains of mathematics, we can make computer simulations, but we'll never get it. I'll never get the brain. All I can do is take the way that you explained the 16 aspects of the mind, you simplified it down to 4. The best I can do is take the thousands of trillions of connections in the brain and make some cartoony model that my impoverished intellect can sort of get a sense of.
They're building a simulator, brain simulator,
Yeah.
Andrew Markram is busy building this simulated brain. All that is fine. We are looking at the physical mechanics of what's happening. The complexity of what's happening is beyond the physical mechanics. See, looking at the physical mechanics of the brain, the neuronal function and the electric… this thing that's happening, the waves that are flowing, whatever things happening, is fantastic because of the complexity of what it is, the sophistication of what it is. It is the gadget, no question, okay? This human gadget is the gadget on the planet. Of what we have seen, This is the most sophisticated gadget on the planet, there's no question about that. Keeping that aside, but even this brain can be manufactured with something as simple as a piece of a carrot or a bread. So I'm saying, there is an intelligence here which can create a brain. Why are you ignoring that intelligence?
I think that's the heart of science, is to try to understand what that is. What I mean by that is, so we have different approaches in science to get there, but studying the genetic code and understanding how the heck with 27,000 genes can you unpack a human being? Because whatever the truth is of what's happening spiritually, if there's a separate you or not, what we know for sure is that you can unpack a human being from these 4 letters of amino acids, and these base pairs that make these proteins, and somehow that all gets unpacked, fueled by bread and carrots and so on.
These kind of questions have always been on human mind. It happened almost 15,000 years ago. Adiyogi, that means the first yogi, he had 7 disciples. These 7 disciples are full of questions. Some of them are astronomers, some of them are serious mathematicians, things like this. They have a million questions. After some time, Adiyogi is bored with their questions because whatever they ask, it's just a product of their intellect. They're not able to ask a question beyond that. So they ask, what is the nature of this, your cosmos? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How big is it? He's just bored. So he says, your cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed. The entire cosmos, I can pack it into your mustard seed. Then they were flabbergasted by this. Then they said, what is it made of? If you can pack such a huge cosmos, which we can't even imagine where it begins and where it ends into your mustard, what is it made of? He was completely bored, even to utter a word, he simply said like this. 5 elements. Just these 5 elements, the entire universe is a play of these 5 elements. If you master the 5 elements, you have a key to every aspect of creation. If you don't master the 5 elements, if you approach it from outside, as you approach it, it will take on a trillion new forms. As you try to study it, it can take on a trillion new forms as you're looking at it, because that is what it is capable of. Just 5 things. 5 million things would be difficult. 5, I'm sure you and me can study, isn't it? At least I'm capable of 5. You're talking in millions and billions, but I'm 5.
Are you going to tell me what the 5 are?
Huh?
Are you going to tell me what the 5 elements are?
These 5 elements, it's called earth, fire, water, air, space. These are 5 things.
Maybe. Maybe that'll work in the end.
Everything is just within this. Everything that you call as physical creation has substance of some kind. This is earth. And all of it is in movement, that's called air. All of it ascribes to some temperature, that is fire. And in everything there is water, which is the cohesiveness. If there is no water, there is no cohesiveness in anything. And all of it is held together by what we call as akash. Here we're calling it as space. In English language, it doesn't really describe what we are saying, but it's called akash. Maybe a more closer word in English language would be ether, etheric space, or whatever they're calling it as.
Okay.
So, these are the 5 things, whether an atom or a subatomic particle, everything is made of these five things. So you don't have to study the trillions of things which are manifestations of these five. If you understand these five things, if you have grasp over these five things, then everything becomes accessible. So the fundamental, the most basic process, unfortunately, the word yoga conjures completely wrong images in America. The most fundamental aspect of yoga is called bhuta shuddhi. This means cleansing of the elements so that you can feel them separately in your own system. This very body is 72% water and 12% earth, 6% air, 4% fire, remaining is space. If you take charge of these things, what you need to know, everything that is life is here, because modern physicists are saying, as you sit here, every subatomic particle is in communication with the rest of the cosmos. If it is so, you just have to become alive to it. You just have to become receptive to it. Rather than going around the cosmos and studying, if you sit here, it's reverberating because the nature… I think there is some constructional theory, something coming up in California, I don't know, you must be acquainted with these things.
I blurbed the book actually on the back.
So fundamentally what they're saying is, whether it is the smallest thing or the biggest thing, everything, the fundamental design is same. It is only complexity and sophistication which is improving. Between an amoeba and you, the fundamental design is same. It is much more complex and sophisticated, but essentially life-making design is same. So if it is so, the most fundamental materials which make this life and every other physical aspect of what we see in this creation, if we know the ingredients and how they happen, then you have a key to every aspect of life. But if you try to study the creation itself, as you study, they will multiply into billions and trillions.